If you haven't checked out my latest article at my website, you need to. I was sent a very interesting article by Ynet News, where the writer indicated that he didn't believe that peace would be established unless U.S. President Barack Obama took a personal interest in getting involved himself. Now, of course, I believe when the Antichrist does rise, he will rise up out of the European Union, but I think he will take a personal interest in getting the peace talks done, and that's exactly what he'll do. Now, whether or not he will rise up out of the P5+5, what I believe will ultimately, if that does end up being the 10 kingdom nation of the Antichrist, or whether he will rise up out of the European Union as a bloc, is anyone's guess at this point. But as I've said in the past, I believe that the P5+1 could ultimately rise up and become the P5+5, where the additional 4 countries that will be included will be European Union nations, and then that is where the Antichrist will rise up out of one of those European Union nations. But over the years, there have been lots of interest in the European Union to become what is known as a United States of Europe. And what they mean by becoming a United States of Europe, each nation or participating nation that is in the European Union would become accountable to a United States federal type of oversight, which is, like the United States is now. There are not 50 states who are doing 50 different things. There's a set of rules in the United States in which we all have to abide. And of course, we have one leader who is known as our president, who represents us on the international stage. And that's exactly what the European Union is looking to become. And that's really one of the reasons why they are still in their economic struggles, that they have 20 plus nations who are all acting autonomously, and there's no oversight on any of these nations as a collective body, and the European Central Bank is having a terrible time getting this economic crisis under control. I mean, if you can't make a nation do what you want them to do, and it's not uniform across the board, you're going to have problems, especially when there are such diversities of income levels and wealth throughout the European Union. It's very difficult to keep everybody on the same page. And this United States of Europe may very well be created to get rid of some of the nations that simply aren't keeping up with the economic standards that the European Union has set. And of course, for many years, a core EU has been talked about. And that very well may be the direction that is also created, in which there are 10 nations that are created that will be under one ruler. And of course, the Antichrist could rise up out of this United States of Europe. But there's no question something needs to be done about the economic state of the European Union. They know, and they simply can't keep going on the way they're going. They will at some point have to have some type of financial and economic unity and guidelines that will work across the board, for which the Central Bank of Europe can control. This is what some of the article does say. It says, we need to build a United States of Europe with the Commission as government and 2 chambers, the European Parliament and the Senate of member states, she said. And the person they're talking about is Viviane Reding, Vice President of the European Commission and the longest-serving Brussels Commissioner. Mrs. Reding's vision, which is shared by many in the European institutions, would transform the EU into superstate, relegating national governments and parliaments to a minor political role equivalent to that played by local councils in Britain. Under her plan, the Commission would have supremacy over governments, and the EMPs in the European Parliament would supersede the sovereignty of MPs in the House of Commons. And basically what this plan does is it gives the European Union government more power instead of less, which is what they believe they need to have in order to enforce rules of finance and of trying to shore up this economy. And voters will vote on this spring in order to see whether or not they do want the European Union to have more power in ruling as a whole, as opposed to allowing each nation to dictate their own economic policies. Now, outside of the peace talks that are going on in the Middle East, this is one of the main aspects of Bible prophecy that you should be looking at. Now, the Bible is clear, and most Bible prophecy experts do agree, that the rise of the Antichrist will come out of the European Union, which is now known as, in the Bible prophecy circles, as a new revived Roman Empire. Now, I realize there are some people who listen to my videos that they simply don't believe it's going to be coming out of the European Union. That's fine. But I would still encourage you to take a look at this particular part of Bible prophecy and do your own research and determine what you think is going to be the kingdom of the Antichrist. Now, something else has been brought to my attention. I have been following this over the last couple of months, and that is since the reinduction of Israeli Prime Minister Lieberman, he has gone from a staunch opposer of any type of Palestinian state to almost a cheerleader for a Palestinian state and for Israel to take a deal. In fact, in the latest article, Israel National News, the headline states that Lieberman turns heads in praising Kerry's offer. And the subheading says, Foreign Minister Lieberman turns some heads, urges Israel to accept the peace deal currently being brokered by Washington. And you know, if you've been following this peace process for very long, you know that Mr. Lieberman urging the Israelis to accept a peace deal with the Palestinians is a complete about-face for him. And to the point it's somewhat shocking, really. Now, the article does say that he believes that this has become a international distraction for Israel and that the world needs to start thinking of Israel in better terms and for more about their accomplishments than this ongoing decades-long peace accord. In other words, start concentrating upon Israel's successes than on their failures. Now, of course, that very well could be his thinking, even despite what he really thinks. But certainly, I am of the mind that a peace accord is more of a possibility than it certainly was 5, 10, 12, 15 years ago. Now, whether or not it will come through the U.S. Is unknown. I would say, as I've said many times, I don't believe it will. I think eventually that the U.S. will walk away from it, or at least take a back seat and allow the European Union or the P5+1 or whoever the case may be to try and attempt to bring this long-standing peace accord to its finality. Both the European Union and the U.S. have threatened to withdraw aid from both parties, but I don't think it's going to come down to that, actually. But hopefully in the months ahead, we will see this peace accord move forward and, of course, the rapture of the church taking place ahead of that. And, of course, I always encourage you, those a listener, that if you don't know the Lord, you need to come to Him as soon as possible because your time is running out. You know, I say this every day, and every time that I get on and make a video, that I compel my listeners to come to the Lord if they don't know the Lord. I also want to compel you also, if you are a Christian, that you take my Tribulation Period Survival Guide seriously and place it in the hands of as many friends, neighbors, and loved ones as you possibly can. Now, one of my long-time listeners, and he also has a little ministry of his own, was in contact with me the other day and said that he planned on buying 10. He went to an online bookstore and that's what he did. He purchased 10 to give out to his friends, neighbors, and loved ones. I also had another of my readers comment that he had witnessed many, many times to his friends, neighbors, and loved ones without any type of success, and he thought that this book was a good idea. And the reason why I thought this book was a good idea, that once the rapture of the church takes place, that many on this earth will be looking for answers. And I believe that this book can play a major role in providing those answers and also to compel those who read it to come to the Lord. So whether or not you believe a Tribulation Period Survival Guide will be of any value is immaterial. What will be of value is that this book compels people to know Jesus as Savior. And frankly, that is the important part of any Christian book that is created. Without that, it's just another self-help book. So if you're having trouble getting through to your loved ones to come to know the Lord, this very well may be the book that can finally get them to realize that they need Jesus as Savior. Well, this is Terry Malone with the Calvary Prophecy Report.